I'm Greg Lisi. I'm the program director here at PrepMD, and it's a pleasure to take you for a little bit of a tour of our facility. Hopefully, as we walk through today, you'll get a chance to maybe see some of the faculty, students buzzing about the facility. Kind of a quiet day here today. That said, though, still love to show you what's going on. And so why don't you come on in, and we'll see the facility. So as you come in, we're located in a office complex just south of Boston. And come into our facility. This is the PrepMD complex. You come right into the main area here. Our office manager stepped away. So right now, as you come in, this is where Melissa Monaco, our office manager, sits. It looks like they're actually sorting through some of the student exams. Interestingly, the students are coming up on their practical exams. So today is actually a self-study, group practice, and some practical exam day. So students are kind of at a break right now, so you may not see too many folks about the facility. If you were to come over here, I'll point out this is the weekly schedule. Each day students come in, we have the weekly schedule posted. Students are actually just a few weeks away from graduation, so it's kind of exciting for them. To pass their graduation, they have a written final exam that they're preparing for, as well as 2 practical exams that they have to do. So the practical exams take place in the actual prep lab. So here at PrepMD, we've built out our own mock facility. It's a mock prep we call it the prep lab. As I like to say, it's like PrepMD Community Hospital here. We do all the training as if you were in a real hospital environment. So the goal here was to create an environment where students can go into an EP or electrophysiology lab, cath lab environment and get the experience of what it would be like in the hospital before they actually have to go into the hospital, part of our clinical rotation. So actually, why don't we just step right into the lab as we go. So labs, like I said, right here in our main entrance, as you can see on the wall here, we're going to have about 20, I think this is about our 22nd class in session. We've put over 350 students into the space, and we're proud of all of the students that have graduated from the program. So as you come in here, this is the prep lab. The goal here, we sometimes describe it, I don't know, for those of you that play sports, kind of like a batting cage. You know, in baseball, softball, if you play softball, you go in the batting cage, you try and get as many reps as you can in before the game. So similarly, this is kind of our batting cage for our students. It's an opportunity where they get to work in a simulated environment to prepare themselves to go into our clinical rotations. So the program here at PrepMD is broken into 3 phases. We get a core concepts phase that students do through distance learning before they even get on site here. Once they get on site, there's a preclinical phase, which is preparing them for clinical rotations. So during that preclinical site, they're going to spend time in this lab, some of our other simulation equipment, getting ready to go into clinical rotations to prepare them for that hospital experience. I remember the first time I went into a case, 18 years ago. It was in Michigan. I was a clinical support specialist. At the time, the company was Guidant, and I remember everything seemed like it was moving at 500 miles an hour. And I've been through a little bit of training with the company up to that point, but things were moving so quickly. Our goal is to really slow that speed down for the students. And so by spending time here in the lab before they go into the hospital environment, they know what to experience. So for example, they come in the lab, they learn, where are they going to stand as a rep? What can they touch? What can't they touch? First thing anybody learns at all is they always, any basic, trainings, they say, don't touch anything blue. That's all the reps will tell you, your day 1 of the job, just don't touch anything blue. Because most people who haven't been through training don't know how to handle themselves inside of the operating environment. So our students are going to have the experience to work with simulation equipment. So let me tell you a little bit about the lab here. So I'm going to move some things around. Normally you wouldn't do this, okay? But we've got a mock table set up here that would be where the physician would stand with his staff between the table and between the patient. So this is the operating room table where we actually have our virtual patient here. So we've got a simulator that allows us to replicate what it would be like to implant the device during procedure. So the case that they're getting ready to do, actually, I don't know if this is from the last case they did this morning. We had a student in this morning that was doing their practical exam. So it looks like the case that they must have done was a dual chamber ICD, or implantable defibrillator. So as I stepped on the pedal here, I don't know if you can tell from the video, the heart actually starts beating, replicating a fluoro. You can see that lead moving back and forth. So we've got 2 wires, or what we call leads, actually inside the patient's heart. One in the patient's ventricle or the bottom chamber of the heart, and another one in the atrium. And this particular system is designed to defibrillate a patient if they were to have a life-threatening arrhythmia. So these students here will learn to support the physician in the implantation of the device. They're really to be consultants in the procedure. They have a couple different roles. As I said, they advise in certain situations. They particularly advising on the safe and efficacious use of their product. They also test the equipment. So one of the things that they'll use is something called a programmer, which is here, and there's a label on it here that says do not touch because it's set up for a student to do their actual practical exam. So I don't want to mess the things up. The faculty have things set up a certain way for them. But this programmer, the student's going to have to come in. They're going to be evaluated on their ability to interact with the physician, to set up the programmer, to interrogate the device, to program the device for the patient based on the condition that the patient's facing. Also, they'll have to test the wires that were put inside the patient's heart. We'll have the ability to simulate connecting cables to simulated wires here. They'll have to test certain measurements, see how the patient's heart rhythm reacts to that. One of the things that you can see here in the simulator we have the ability to run a variety of different patient rhythms through the computer to the simulator, and it gets displayed here. So one of the students, they'll have to go in and interpret the rhythm, understand what changes happen to the rhythm during the procedure. It looks like right now we've just got a patient with basic sinus bradycardia with a little bit of first-degree heart block going on. But the student's going to have to analyze that, interpret that, talk to the physician about it, and then react to changes to the rhythm that may take place in the procedure. So they're going to have quite a challenging role it gets a little stressful for the students because one, they know they have to pass this. It's an evaluated exam. It counts as about their final. They have a written final, a practical exam at the implant, and a practical exam at the follow-up of the device. And the practical portion counts about 20% of their overall final grade for their final exam grade, which gets averaged into their overall scores. Students will also have to manage what is inventory, so based on what the physician may want for the case, when we role play the physician, they're going to have to select inventory, make sure they make the right selections, make sure they have the right discussion with the doctor about the product. And these are all things that these students have been training for the last, say, about 20 weeks now through the program. They began with the online distance learning portion, came on site, got ready to go to clinical rotations through the preclinical phase, and now they're wrapping up their clinical rotations and really preparing for their exam portion. So there's a lot that goes on in the lab. Not only do we use this to get them ready to go out in the clinicals, but when they're out actually in the clinical rotation, we use the lab to reinforce the things that they're seeing. Every Monday, the students have to do a case study presentation, and they do a presentation on what they've observed. They have to bring their clinical rotation observations here, and a lot of times then we'll put them back in scenarios in the lab that may have replicated something that they've seen in clinicals, or we're talking about a topic and reinforcing that topic at another level. So they get a little bit more sophisticated in their learning and their understanding once they're out in clinical rotations, and we do that back here with advanced workshops back in the lab. So when they do their presentations, they actually have to do those in the classroom. So why don't we kind of walk out of the lab, and we'll go on over to the classroom. We'll go to classroom A, which is our main classroom here at Prep. So here you can see this is their practice sign-up sheet. So the students are they're signing up for getting ready. They select the programmer for the company that they want to work with. They've been doing practice sessions with the faculty, getting ready for that also. So they're committing a lot of time into getting ready for the exam. We probably had about half a dozen students in earlier this morning that were doing some one-on-one work with faculty, preparing for the practical application exam. And then I think we had a practical exam that was completed this morning also. So here's the main classroom, designed seating capacity about 32 students. I always say it's not about filling the room, but it's about putting the right students in the room. And anyone who's talked to me about the program has probably heard me say that. We could easily fill this with 30 students. At the end of the day, It's about putting the right students in the seat, the students that understand that this program is a tool. It's a tool and a resource to get them to where they want to go professionally. I say this is a tool, it's not a ticket. And the student who applies to the program, or the candidate who does, and thinks that they can get admitted, write a check for tuition, and at the end of 23, 24 weeks, there's going to be a job offer just waiting for them. That student's sadly mistaken. What it is, it's a partnership working together to help that student get to where they need to be, and it takes a lot of commitment on the student's behalf. It's a competitive environment. We post each week updated scores, and don't zoom in on them, our students will be embarrassed. No. Say, no, don't put my names up there. But we post each week the students' scores, where they are. They know exactly where they are in their class average. Not only we post it for the students, but we post it for the hiring managers. When a hiring manager comes in, they know exactly where that student stands in their class rank. And it's a competitive group, but the thing that makes it exciting to me as a faculty member, while it's a competitive program, every single class that's come through here, I've seen the students come together and bond and really support each other throughout the process. They become a family, and they create these bonds that last beyond the program. I just got an email from a student the other day. He was telling me about his wedding that was coming up, and he says it's amazing after 24 weeks here at Prep, the number of students from this class that are coming to his wedding because of the bond that they formed together, because they're really working tirelessly to learn and understand the subject matter. So all the students, they get iPads while they're here. They lease the iPads. We do all of our content electronically. Presentations we use through the Apple TV. When the students have to brief, they brief in this room because they have to do presentations themselves earlier. I mentioned that earlier when they're out in clinical rotations. A large part of the job of a clinical specialist is being able to educate the customer on the use of their product. So our students have to feel comfortable presenting. They have to feel comfortable in front of a group or one-on-one instructing on the use of a product. So we create the environment here from day one. Actually, their first day on site, they actually have to come up. They have to do a short elevator speech about themselves, and we do a little game where they have to draw a card and take 90 seconds to talk about something that they've learned about, during their distance learning phase. And that's part of helping them prepare, because they're also their day one on site here. They have their first on-site exam. They've been taking exams while they've been in the distance learning part, but then day one, they get hit right off with a written exam on site too. It's an intense program. It's not for everyone. I had a student sits right about there. He says, this is harder than the graduate work he did from a graduate school program because of the nature of the work that we do here. But it's important work. At the end of the day, I tell the students and all the faculty to do is that the patients that you're going to be working with, remember they're someone's brother, mother, uncle, aunt, sister. And we want to make sure that you're working in capacity where you can be that consultant to a physician or to a nurse, any allied health professional, on the use of your product. And you need to understand the fundamentals that govern the medical technology that they're going to work with. So why don't we come on outside the room? Here you can see we've got one of the company programmers set up here, and then we've got more programmers set up in what we call the programmer bar. So we've got another schedule here. So this is where the students do their follow-up practical exam. So in the follow-up practical exam, they have to show competency on what it is to check a patient's device. They're going to check the device in a clinic setting, so this sort of serves as a mock clinic. Now, I think a lot of students get excited about the idea of working inside the implant environment, and it is an exciting environment to be in. But the reality is when a patient gets a device, that implant lasts from anywhere from 40 minutes to, depending on the sophistication of the procedure, a couple hours. If some could even go longer. But then that patient has the device for the rest of their life. And a key part of that is helping manage that device in the follow-up process. So there are times when you're working as a medical device specialist, you may go and you may have to go to the emergency room to check a patient's device. You may go to the physician's office to help check the device. Some of the students who graduate from this program, go and actually work for the healthcare providers themselves. Some work for hospitals, in clinics. Some work in a major physician's office and helps run and manage the clinic there. And so they're seeing these patients on a daily basis, helping making sure the device is maximized for their patients. I describe these devices as electrical medication. A physician really they set the device to the best conditions for the patient, and it's really about that patient. So learning how to follow these devices, learning all the nuances that go into the electrical programming is important in being a part of that process with the physician. I call it a triangle of care. You've got a patient, you have a device, and you have a caregiver. And for those three things to really interact as well as they should, sometimes it takes a well-trained device specialist to bring it all together. These are smart, these are brilliant physicians. They're not just smart, these are brilliant allied health professionals that our students get an opportunity to work with. But the changes that happen with this technology, that's what makes the device specialist so key, is they're keeping those allied health professionals, those physicians up to date in what's going on, and really serve as that bridge in that triangle of care. So inside the programmer bar, we'll walk in real quickly. We won't bother Dan too much, but he's one of our faculty members. Dan's working on putting some curriculum together for our students. Again, here you can see the programmers. We set up a variety of different manufacturers. We will do classrooms in here also. So the class workshops, where students will be working on a variety of different programmers. They may be given a scenario, and they have to solve that scenario with regards to how the device is programmed, see if there's a troubleshooting thing that needs to go on, or find the problem within the device, or maybe there's a scenario where the patient's not feeling as well as they should, and they need to look at what's going on with the device and see what recommendation they might make to the physician. We have the ability to look at, as a faculty, we can look at the monitors, see what the students are doing without leaning over their shoulders. I just remember when I was a kid in school, I used to hate it when that teacher kind of stood behind me while I was doing my work. So we can kind of watch them a little bit from a distance, but be there to help them. And then we have the students do a lot, again, the idea of presenting and having to talk about what's going on with the devices, is they have to come up then and point out to their colleagues what it was that they saw, what were they doing, and really learning how to navigate these programmers. The company's expectation of someone who comes out of this program is that they know their way around the programmer, that they can do a basic follow-up, and that they can add value right away to the team that they come into. And that's really the difference that someone who comes to this program delivers on day one going into their job. They've been exposed to the technology, they've been exposed to the clinical application, they understand what's going on with the patient, they've worked and observed in the clinical environment, and the expectation of the hiring manager and the team that they join is that they can add value right away. Okay? Obviously, they're still going to need to be certified on that company's product and meet those companies' specific training requirements, but that learning curve is shortened dramatically. I remember when I started in the industry, there was this period of time where all I could do was follow my teammates around because I hadn't been trained. I didn't know the environment, I didn't know the technology. But students who come out of this program, the expectation is they're contributing right away coming out, and that's what makes them valuable to the hiring managers. Let's step out, take a look at some of the other space that we have here, and hopefully we're staying on time.
Yep, we are.
We've got a little bit of a break area for our students. So the students they're here from, class starts in preclinical phase at 8 o'clock, or 8 to 8:30 depending on the day. When clinical rotations start, it's 9 o'clock. And excuse me, class is usually scheduled to go to, and it's scheduled to go to 5 each day, and sometimes we'll end a little early, but there are days we go long. This is a long day for the students, so it's nice for them to have a little bit of a break space. Students will bring their lunches in, keep them in the refrigerator. We do have an on-site cafe down the hall that we kind of came in this morning. Down the hall at the other end is a place called Elena's Cafe. They make breakfast and lunches, so students will sometimes get food there. A lot of students will bring in stuff here, and they'll have their lunch, or they'll go out into the main atrium to sit, but it really becomes, again, a community spot. On the board here, it's always great to hear from former students or people who've come and visited the program. We get a lot of notes, and it's always, what makes it worthwhile for me is that when we hear back from a student that they've been able to start their career and that they've moved their life to that next stage, and that's really what coming to this program is about. In some ways, you could say to people, maybe we're just a sophisticated trade school. We're teaching a very specific skill, but without that skill, they wouldn't be able to penetrate into this world of medical devices. And if any of you have tried to do it on your own, it's a very difficult space to break into. You need that specialization. So we're able to, deliver that to the students, and we get our gratification, from seeing them succeed. I remember when I was a clinical specialist and seeing how much patients improved, or seeing satisfaction, when a nurse was able to help a nurse trouble through a device, or if a physician had a tough case and maybe I was able to provide a little bit of insight on my product. Those were the things that gave me satisfaction. Here, it's really about seeing those students succeed. When I was a regional manager for one of the companies, I wanted to see my teammates succeed. And I think as a faculty, sometimes we're committed to the success of our students, and we want them to do well. So it becomes a bit of a family feeling here while they're here with us. So some of our literature from different journals that have been posted over time. I always love to point this out. We had a student graduate from the program, and it was our first, we call it forward deployed interview. He actually was interviewing from a medical tent in Afghanistan. I'd like to report that student's very happy in the industry now. This was several years ago, working as a clinical specialist. He was placed, if I remember, back down in Louisiana near home. And we have a placement pin board here. We're probably a couple years from updating this, to be honest. But the goal here, the thought was give students an idea of where placements happen. And you can see most of the placements are going to focus around where the major populations are in the country. So that's where the major hospital areas are. But we place throughout the country with all the companies within the space. As I walk down the hallway here, we've got a variety of different offices. This is just a faculty breakout room. Sometimes we'll do workshops in here with the students also. Faculty, we like to meet as a team, usually at lunch, kind of talk about the students, really understand how they're doing in the program, getting to know if someone's struggling, is there something that we can do, what's the dynamic in the class. These kind of discussions are really common for us to have, because it's important to us to understand and know how everybody's doing. We sometimes will use this board here to post different events that are going on. If we have interviews coming on, graduations, so we'll post different calendar events. And as I said, we've got different faculty offices down the hall. Up here, we've got the offices for what's known as RemoteMD, which a lot of people don't realize is we actually have 3 different businesses that we run out of this facility. We run PrepMD, and PrepMD obviously is our core business, is our training and placement business. We train the students and we place them within the industry, and we're very happy to have a very strong placement rate. I think we're still around 95% at 90 days post-graduation. But we also run 2 other businesses. We run a business called PrepMD Professionals, which is a contract service organization, where we actually hire students ourselves and put them in contracted roles around the country. They're 40-hour-a-week roles. But what sometimes happens is that there's a hiring manager that he may not have approval to do a full-time equivalent on his team, or he really wants to make sure that this person's committed to the geography. So what he would prefer to do is that he wants to contract that person. He contracts them to full-time work, but instead of working for the company directly, they actually work for us, PrepMD Professionals. We hire them, we do their benefits through us, we've got a relationship with that company, and during a contract period, usually about 6 months, that person is working in the company as if they were a direct employee of the company, but they really work for us. The goal is to convert that patient to that student to a direct role, but it really gives them sort of that trial period. It's great for the hiring manager because they make sure that it's the right student and it's the right candidate for the job, and it's great for the candidate because they make sure it's the right geography and the right team for them. So that's really been a successful way of moving people into the industry. And we set up that contract service organization because we found that there were opportunities for students to get started in an area in contracting, but there wasn't a vehicle to get them into those roles. So we built the contract service organization ourselves. And then the third business is RemoteMD. What's exciting about these devices today, as I mentioned earlier, that the implant happens, but then these devices are followed for the rest of their life. These devices have gone through a great evolution. Actually, here's a poster from one of our companies that we work with showing the evolution of devices from these devices that were once implanted in a patient's abdomen to devices that are moved now in the patient's chest. And here, this little clip on the end was one of the first what we call wireless technology devices provided by this company. And today, all of the companies have the ability to have their devices monitored through RF telemetry. So while the patient has this device for the rest of their life, they can now go home with bedside monitors that allow physicians to get reports on these devices while the patient's at home. And so what it allows them to do is minimize the number of times the patient has to go into the doctor's office. It allows them to focus in the doctor's office on the patients that maybe need fine-tuning or reprogramming, those patients that really need the attention. And then the other patients, we're just kind of watching remotely, making sure things that are going. And actually a few years ago, it became the gold standard for monitoring these devices. It's actually a Class 1 indication that these devices should be monitored remotely, but it's a huge burden for the healthcare system to do this. So we've actually set up our own monitoring service, and we actually hire our own students to work as part of this monitoring service also. So it's a growing aspect of the industry. Students who leave the program will work in clinics, as I mentioned earlier, and part of their job will be to do some of this remote monitoring. So we've actually incorporated remote monitoring into part of our core curriculum. Our core curriculum really covers devices itself, and I know I've been talking mainly about devices. It covers the remote follow-up of the devices. It also covers electrophysiology, and that's a huge part of what we're doing. As a matter of fact, the current class that we have, we've seen a large number of the students we're seeing an increase in those number of students that are moving into roles working on the EP side in mapping specialists. As a matter of fact, our first hire coming out of this class, a woman, she actually had to leave early. We expedited her graduation requirements because she got hired in one of these EP mapping roles, and they wanted her to start early. And it's not uncommon for us to have to accelerate a student every once in a while. Behind me, you can see a resource area, different manuals for the students to do different research as they go, more faculty hours. You can see one of our co-founders, Matt O'Neill, working off at his desk, and Matt's going to wave. If I know Matt, he's probably working on a placement opportunity for one of our students or coordinating something on that side. I also can see working in there with Matt, one of our faculty members, Kate Blaker. Kate's putting together some curriculum for us that we're working. We're always looking to see how do we develop new curriculum. One of the things I'm really proud of is that we don't sit back and say that we do the program. I like to say we never do the program twice the same way. So it's important to us to always look at what are we doing and how can we change things. And one of the things we'll do next week with our students is we're going to bring them all in, and we're going to have a sit down with everybody and get their feedback on how the session has gone for them. What recommendations can they make for the next program? And we really try and incorporate that in from program to program. Our other co-founder, Bob Mattioli, is working away, probably also trying to find opportunities for our students. It's amazing the amount of time that both Bob and Matt spend on the phone talking to hiring managers, talking to the companies, working on behalf of the students. Satya's office there. Hopefully I have the door closed.
That's me.
Yeah. Hopefully I have the door closed to my office because it's always the messiest one. Susan Stamatis. It's kind of funny on the back wall here. It's I can't speak to all of these devices, but a lot of times when hiring managers come in, they're drawn to up here because we've kind of created our own little library or museum of different devices. So I talked about electrical medication. This is one of the first programmers. And basically all we could tell our devices to do is really what rate they could program at. So they would put this on the device, send the rate through. So three dials to do their programming, a lot easier than the sophisticated programmers that our students train on today. A variety of different device models here. Again, you can talk about the evolution that's happened in technology. There's a lot of exciting things happening from what's known as leadless defibrillators. So defibrillators where we're no longer putting a lead inside of the patient's chest, but they're using an electrode that sits on the outside near the sternum. There's also, let's see what else we got here. There's also wireless pacemakers that are being looked at and utilized by companies today. And here's an example of a pacemaker that is delivered through a catheter that is put inside the patient's heart. And so there's no longer wires with this pacemaker that needs to go into the heart. Where we're still, obviously, there's some limits to this technology, but companies are looking at how to expand it and make it even more relevant for different types of patients in disease states. But we're still, for the majority of the devices that are going today, we're still using these transvenous leads. And so this is the lead that you saw on fluoro. This would have been one of the pacemaker leads. And so the students will learn how these leads are implanted, how they're tested. Today they're put transvenously, so the doctor makes an incision on the patient's chest, and the lead will actually go through a vein into their heart where it sits, is fixated inside of the heart, and it monitors the electrical signals inside of the heart. So the last kind of classroom, there's my messy office. We don't need to go look in there. Another great chart showing the evolution of these devices over time from one of the companies that manufactures these devices. And then the last room, and I'm not going to interrupt too much, but our last room here, I'll let you sit in here. So Susan will smile at us, and so we can see this is our last classroom. Susan and Sarah are working on one of the programmers. So Sarah's one of those committed students who's doing a little extra work to get ready for her practical exam. And so she scheduled some one-on-one time with Susan on this. As we said earlier, this is their self-study day. We had a bunch of folks in earlier this morning. Some folks just left, and Sarah scheduled some one-on-one time to get herself better prepared for her practical. So student right there that's going to go off and work in a clinic in the New York area. So we're really excited for her. And so she's really committing herself to make sure she understands the programmers and what needs to be done. These are our class awards. Each class graduation, so these guys will graduate in a couple weeks, actually February 14th on Valentine's Day. But appropriately, I guess, for a heart medical device cardiac program, an EP program. We do four awards each session. An academic achievement award, the student with the highest GPA. We've got a clinical excellence award, the student that really contributes the most to the clinical environment in the program. A leadership award for leadership inside and outside the classroom. And then a faculty award, really to that student that's grown the most each program. So we've had great students come through the program. We put their names up there. Matter of fact, Kate, I was just reminding myself the other day when I walked by the wall. Kate, one of our faculty members, she actually is a graduate of the program. She graduated from the program. She went to work in industry, and she actually worked locally for one of the companies, and is now looking to transition for another phase of her development. But Kate was one of our early academic award recipients back in 2014. So she did about 3 years in industry, and now making the change to take that experience and help leverage that, which is always exciting to have a new perspective within the faculty side of things. So. And so here we are, back to where we started, our entrance, the prep lab. I hope this has, given you a little bit of a flavor of the facility. Would have loved it to have done it on a day when we had class in session. Today just happened, as I said earlier, be a self-study day for the students. And but that said, hopefully you get a sense of what we're about. And if you have any questions about PrepMD, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. You can find us on the web. We're just prepmd.org or .com. Either one will work. Or can call us. I think we've got a phone number here, 888-633-7737. Who picks up the phone and calls these days? But if you do, I know Melissa, one of the staff here, will pick up the phone, and we're glad to help answer any questions that you have.